Most fashion trends die. Belt buckles survived war, empires, and the internet. This is why belt buckles are so sick. Check this guy out. See that? That's a dope belt buckle. I got 3. 1, 2, 3 belt buckles. When I first noticed them, I was playing music with my buddy Isaac, and we were playing with a band called Angus is Dead out here in Maine. Shout out. And my buddy Max Agassi, the lead singer from Angus is Dead, songwriter, wears a belt buckle a lot. He wears New Balance, purple New Balance shoes, Carhartt pants, a sick belt buckle, a nice striped or whatever button-up shirt, and then hair that looks like Weird Al. And it's sick. And I thought, that's a weird mix, but it works. The belt buckle was the piece that tied it all together. After doing some research about buckles, I found that it's been a thing that's a part of our society since the very beginning. Since the Egyptians used belt buckles, the Roman Empire, the 4th century, used belt buckles. Punks, bikers in the 50s, cowboys. This is why you should use a belt buckle. They're awesome. They've been in history forever. And you can see it. You can see the grandpa wearing a big-ass belt buckle with his pipe and his cowboy hat. But belt buckles are used in all different types of societies and all different types of subcultures. I think there's a thing of Looney Tunes or Tom and Jerry, maybe Tom is wearing a belt buckle and he's like smoking the cigarette. I could be wrong with that. Originally, belt buckles were used in the Roman society to indicate where you're at, your ranking in the hierarchy of the Roman culture. So gladiators used it, legionaries used it. Early in the Roman Empire, belts were used to signify functionality. Belt buckles were also used for securing swords and daggers. The centurions were higher-ranking soldiers, and they often wore decorated belts to distinguish themselves as they were responsible for discipline and uniform standards. So these late century, 4th century Roman empires would use kind of triangle-looking belt buckles to signify status in the army and in the hierarchy. And this is 4th century. We're talking Gregory of Nyssa right here, this guy. Or I think that might be Athanasius. But right after the Council of Nicaea, Orthodox bros would know what I'm talking about. They were also used with medieval knights to signify the same things. So status, power, ranking, what the knights do and what their role is in the army and in the society at the time. This is sick. So they were used for military. They were used for knowing who you are and who you stand with. This is where the buckle becomes more of a badge instead of an object for use. So originally it was used to just keep up your pants for utility. It was used for utility purposes. But slowly it became used as a badge instead of an object. Then we get into the cowboys. The cowboys, that's kind of where you think of when you first think belt buckle. I think of cowboys. I think of Americana. I think of Clint Eastwood. That's not the reality of it. The reality is that the belt buckle goes way before the Western myth and the Western iconography of the cowboy. But it was still used for that. I think that's probably where it was popularized for fashion. A lot of things in fashion start out as utility and then move into more of a statement. Or you could think Carhartt as a utilitarian jacket, and then it slowly got used in subcultures like hip-hop and rap. And now when you think Carhartt, sure, you think of Still Work, but you also think of Jay-Z, of Biggie, of Tupac. These guys that used fashion to make a statement and not just use it as utility. So belt buckles originally, tradition, and then they eventually form into a symbol of rebellion. So the history of that looks like bikers in the 1950s and the 70s, post-World War II, riders adopted a very military style. So they're using belt buckles, they're using patches, they're using leather. And they use these symbols to signify rejection to the mainstream, a nonconformist lifestyle, and it's a pushback to the mainstream culture of the time. So they're using, it's really cool, they're using something traditional and forming it into something that is completely different. Punks in the 1970s. They used like a shabbiness of the economic crisis. So think ripped shirts, think safety pins, think things that shocked the commercialization of the 70s. They used this as an anti-culture. They used this as a statement. So things that were actually happening in the real world, poverty, economic crises, they embraced that and used it as a symbol of rejection. Metalheads in the 1980s utilized the snaggletooth think Motorhead's mascot as the ultimate anti-everything symbol, using spikes, studs, and band logos to represent a no-nonsense rejection polite society. The fun thing about this is, they're using traditional garments as a way of anti-tradition, but that being in and of itself is also creating more lore to the tradition, like things like the belt buckle, So punks and metalheads using belt buckles as a symbol of like F you are actually creating further tradition by trying to be anti-traditional. Juxtaposition. You might think, why do belt buckles still matter? They're sick. They're utilitarian, and they're a statement piece. Why wouldn't you want that? It's everything. It's awesome. It's cool. It's customizable. It's utilitarian. It holds memories. You could wear it every day. I have a John Deere belt buckle. All of my belt buckles were super cheap. They were maybe $5 each, except for the Coors Light one. Got that as a gift. Shout out to Nick and Allie, my brother and sister-in-law, after we visited the Coors Light factory. But I have a John Deere belt buckle, the Coors Light belt buckle, and I have a tractor trailer belt buckle. Shout out Big Ass Truck, sick band. I like belt buckles. I still wear them because I think they're pretty simple. I think it's a nice accessory piece. I think they look cool. I think they're a conversation starter. And they're utilitarian, and I like utilitarian things. Personally, I really like utilitarian things. If it doesn't really serve a function, I tend to not use it. I tend to not waste my money and waste my time with things that are not functional. So where something can look nice and also be functional, it's the best of both worlds. Get a belt buckle. They look cool, and they're utilitarian. What's not to like? Ethan Harrington, go get a belt buckle.